All right, everyone, welcome back. It is Saturday. We made it to Saturday, hopefully. Hope everyone is doing okay. We made it. We made it. Yeah, I'm having internet issues. I've pretty much gotten it down to it's my network adapter. I have a ROG motherboard, and I think my 2.5 gigabit port is having issues, so I may have to update the drivers or something like that. So I don't know, because right before streaming it was down to 20 megabits again. I'm like, what the fuck? So I reset I disabled and re-enabled the adapter, and that didn't work. And I restarted, and then that seemed to have gotten me up to at least about 90 megabits. What happened before, I was able to disable and re-enable the adapter, and that worked. So I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to take a look at that a little bit further, because losing most of my internet isn't very good for just about anything I do. So that's happening. Well, today I have a fairly big grab bag worth of things here. Of course, it's all about capitalism and that sort of a thing, but it's not the typical climate change coronavirus. But we do have a lot of anti-capitalist stuff here going on, as we normally do. We cover the 3 C's, right? So yeah. Oh, and also I got one more episode out for Warhammer 40k Battle Sector. It's scheduled to come out. I'm doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, so for a week. So I've got 8 done, and that will take me to next Friday, I think. So I need to get a bunch more recorded and out there so that I can finish that off. There's like 19 total missions. I'm at mission 8, and hopefully I can find a day where I can just record like 6 more, because that'll be another week and a half or so of recordings. So yeah, once I get that done, again, I'll probably go through and do another playthrough, but I'll be doing it using Assault Marines and Sisters of Battle, which I really do not like. Because they're melee units, or they're really short range units, and they're difficult to use effectively, because they're in melee, therefore they die faster, therefore your death spiral for your group increases, which is difficult for long mission survival and that sort of thing. And then probably I'll go into some humankind as well. I'll see if I can get that in there somewhere. I'm not sure how, not sure when. Time is always the limiting factor there. So, all right. Any questions, comments, suggestions before we get started here? We've got in the music, there's Stream Beats dropped 2 what they call chill step albums out, so those are included in here. So there's just a crap load of more music included in the background music, assuming you can hear it. Anything? Anybody? All right, we'll start with this. This is what I was hoping to cover last week. We didn't quite get to it, but that's cool. We'll do it today. It fits right in with what we have planned for today. So this is from Moneyless Society. I don't know how long they've been up. I think they're fairly new, but they do anti-capitalist, resource-based economy sort of stuff. And I've seen this. I've seen this before. When is this out? I need date times on this. Damn it. Where? I want to say this is several months old, but I don't know. No dates and times. God damn it, people. Put dates and times on your articles so we know when it's been out. Son of a bitch. Okay, it's not there. All right, so again, as I've talked about, I'd like to write an article kind of on this very topic: communism, socialism versus resource-based economy. Because whenever you talk to people about a resource-based economy, well, they say, well, that's just communism. And I'm like, well, no, it's not. Well, I can't explain why. I've done some initial research on this sort of a topic, and it's a difficult topic to get into, because communism itself is a very technical thing. So this article is going to talk about it. So let's get into it, and then let's see what you guys have to say about it. Communism versus resource-based economy, a definitive guide in how a resource-based economy will arise. Now, as you'll remember, I wrote a giant post on that very thing. I'll throw that in here, and it's really interesting within the RBE community about how different our approaches and our opinions are on this sort of a thing. So it'll be interesting to see how they think about it here from Moneyless Society. All right. Okay, well, here you go. One of the hottest topics when it comes to a resource-based economy is exactly how close it is to communism, how they differ, and whether or not they're essentially the same thing. This has been the subject of much debate and has produced some rather heated discussions in more than a few online forums, some of which you've probably been witness to if you've been around the community for any decent length of time. Since communism can be a very passionate subject for many individuals, and with good reason, considering its attempted implementation has literally killed millions of people in the past, we figured we would try to clear up a few things, and with the amount of misinformation out there regarding this subject, it's about time someone gave a definitive, informative, and honest answer to this question. Okay, so the million-dollar question is a resource-based economy just a fancy new age way to say communism? Short answer, yes and no. Slightly longer answer, it depends on who you listen to, what specific definition and form of communism you're talking about, and even your interpretation of some things. And for those of you who wish to simply know the details, that's what I'm talking about below. And yeah, I've talked about this a little bit. For me, with my limited research so far, there's the key difference is that communism, socialism is inherently nationalistic, and then there's some issues with the workers owning the means of production. That in and of itself is divisive from the rest of humanity, and is inherently problematic from my limited understanding. But yeah, essentially what I say is, if communism were a concept that were created today, a resource-based economy is basically what it would end up look like. It's the grown-up, contemporary, modern version of what the reaction against the horrors of capitalism would actually be. Again, this is created up like over 100 years ago, communism and socialism. It's very, very old and very dated, especially within the limits of the technology and social and society of the time. It's very, very dated. Okay, what exactly is communism? While the idea of communism itself has been around for quite some time, tracing its history back literally thousands of years, it became popular in modern day through the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who both lived around the middle of the 19th century and wrote the well-known, widely circulated Communist Manifesto. It was in this document, as well as a few other lesser-known works they produced around the same time, that the general ideas we understand as modern communism took shape. It is important to note, however, that this was only the beginning of what was about to take place. While they outlined the ideas of what communism was, how we might get there, and the events that could possibly transpire, there is a great deal of room for individual interpretation and implementation, which has consequently made the subject much more complex. Their ideas were so widely adapted, debated, and built upon that between what exists only in theory and what has existed in the past and what actually exists today, there's about as many different forms of communism as there are different makes of cars on the highway. Yeah, and it's definitely a large part of the problem of this conversation. This is why it's difficult to pinpoint a single meaning of communism and exactly what it implies. It really depends on where you look and who you ask. Even the definition of the general term communism varies, simply depending on which source you go to, and it's not easy to get a straight answer on exactly where they all come from. You almost have to be a scholar to understand all the details of the subject. Yeah, and this is pretty much my understanding as well. It's such a technical and broad thing. You've got Maoist, Stalinist, right, Marxist, and all these other different forms. It would take forever to read just to have an understanding of the breadth of this subject. Go to one site and it sounds like an altruistic utopia. Read a bit further and it sounds something out of an Orwellian nightmare. For instance, take what's found on dictionary.com. Theory number 1, a theory or system of social organization based upon the holding of property in common, actual ownership being ascribed to the community as a whole or to the state. Number 2, often initial capital letters, often initial capital letter, a system of social organization in which all economic and social activity is controlled by a totalitarian state dominated by a single and self-perpetuating political party. Okay. Yeah, and so this is kind of the broad definition. This is kind of how how it has turned out contemporarily throughout our history. And it continues. British Dictionary definitions for communism. Number 1, advocacy of a classless society in which private ownership has been abolished and the means of production and subsistence belong to the community. Any social, economic, or political movement or doctrine aimed at achieving such a society. That's number 2. Number 3, a political movement based upon the writings of Marx that considers history in terms of class conflict and revolutionary struggle, resulting eventually in the victory of the proletariat and the establishment of a socialist order based upon public ownership of the means of production. See also Marxism, Leninism, socialism. I could list many more short definitions from other sources that all sound different, but I think you get the point. And this perfectly highlights one of the main differences between communism and a resource-based economy. You understand why you get so many differences when you understand communism, the theory, is not the same as a, quote, communist society. And that pretty much goes with anything, right? The theoretical whatever, when it comes to social or economic theory, is never the same as how it actually renders when in practice. And both of these are vastly different from the currently practiced communist state, a variation of Marxism-Leninism. This is the aha moment you've been waiting for. The main difference between a resource-based economy and communism is that the idea of communism itself is a theory of progression of a society, and many varying details have to do with exactly where a particular society is along that progression, and also how it exactly ends up at eventual complete communism, or what is known as a communist society. Okay, yeah, so that's another thing. Yeah, that's one of those differences. It's like when it comes to communism and socialism, socialism is through doing it through the existing systems and gradually making that transition through law and through a step-by-step into socialism, whereas communist is typically done through revolution. Violence. In reality, when most people refer to communism, especially when they say it still uses money, government, or social class, they're actually referring to a communist state. This is what China, Cuba, Vietnam, and Vietnam are currently ruled under today. The problem with the communist state is it lends opportunity for its leaders to take advantage of and abuse the system, and consequently, the modern communist state is often characterized by massive corruption, poverty, wealth, and inequality, with the few in charge reaping most of the benefits. Right, and so we talked about this yesterday with someone who came on who really didn't know what he was talking about. But this is exactly right. And let me go ahead and pull this up. I wrote this post, right? Socialism, a continuum. It's where I talk about the different, when we talk about, what do people mean when they talk about socialism? There's like 3 basic understandings of how we talk about socialism. Stoic, how you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. How you doing today? Reading through an article talking about communism versus a resource-based economy, just going through that sort of thing. I'm doing okay. I was a little frazzled to begin with because I've been having some internet issues, and looks like my motherboard's adapter for the network card is not cooperating, so I had to deal with that. But other than that, I'm doing okay. Yeah, I've got repetitive strain injury. I've had this for over a decade. I wear these, and it helps to prevent the damage and stuff like that. So I'm doing okay with my hands, pretty much. It's a lot better than the worst it's ever been. I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I was playing MechWarrior Online and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and it was wrecking my hands. So I had to quit playing those and do some massage therapy and stuff like that, and change the way I do things to eventually get my hands so that at least it's workable. So now all I can pretty much play is turn-based games, which I do, and it turns out as long as I'm not too aggressive playing it, my hands are pretty much okay so far. Yeah, it's a shame because I was playing Borderlands and Mass Effect. I was playing these with my parents, which was amazing. And yeah, I can't play those sorts of games anymore. That's okay. That is okay. Paradox games don't require a lot of hand movements, so that's something. They can be. I've just really just to be safe stuck with turn-based stuff, just so I don't have to worry about it. I think wasn't BattleTech? I think BattleTech was put out under Paradox, wasn't it? Or were they through Epic? I can't remember which. But yeah, BattleTech. What do I have here? What am I playing now? So I've got Warhammer 40k Battle Sector, which I have some videos out on YouTube. BattleTech, Baldur's Gate 3, Solasta. Come on. Mordheim, City of the Damned, Phoenix Point, Axis and Allies, Stellaris. Yeah, whatever I can find turn-based. And it's most are first-person shooters, first-person Twitch games, which saddens me. So I was really looking forward to when this was coming out, Division, because they had the drones were initially going to be much easier to play than the normal thing. So I was really looking forward to play the drone, so I could at least play a little bit. Because I was thinking my friends were going to play it, but they didn't. But I was still sad. I was still very sad. Interactive fiction. Secret games. That's a paradox games. CK2, EU2. I'm not familiar with those games. What are those games? Oh, interactive fiction. So text-based stuff, right? Do I have what? Seb. Hello, Raballo. How you doing? Text-based stuff. Okay. Yeah, I don't do anything really text-based stuff. Do I have tornadoes? Tornadoes? In our country, we do. I am in the Midwest where we do have them. I know there was some place, I don't know, within 20 minutes, half an hour of us that has been struck by them. But I'm in a big enough town where I haven't had really any problems with that. Fortunately, we're in a town of about 12,000 people. So I've been pretty much safe from that so far. We've had a few tornado warnings this summer, but like one or two, but that's pretty much it. Nothing came of it here in my area, thankfully. I did have someone recommend, what was it, Choice of Robots to me. So I have done that game once out of recommendation, which was pretty interesting. But yeah, I prefer more visual stuff. Yeah, lots of tornadoes, and it's going to get worse because of course, climate change, because the temperature differentials and the hot pockets that are going to be over the country, and it's going to be hotter and hotter, and I'm sure tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff like that are going to be so much worse. And they've got some places in the world where at some point, probably the next 10 years, people aren't going to be able to live there, and actually going outside might for too long actually kill you. So we covered that here, the wet bulb effect. When the temperature and the humidity gets high enough, your body can't cool down, and it can eventually kill people. So lots of horrors are coming. Tornadoes are one of them. Yes, definitely. Tornadoes and hurricanes, and everything's on fire, and water wars and climate refugees. It's going to be such a great next few decades. Weather in summer here is already reaching 55 degrees Celsius at its peak. Ooh, 55 is holy fuck in a box. Holy shit, dude. Where the fuck are you from? 131? That's insane. Kuwait. Oh, yeah. Middle East. Yeah, and that's some of the places where the temperatures have gotten high enough to inflict that wet bubble effect. I don't remember where in the Middle East this has happened, but there's been like the hottest place in the world in one of those Middle East countries where this is happening. Yeah, holy fuck, dude. Stay cool, because it's not gonna get any better, unfortunately, due to climate change and all that stuff. Stay safe. Yeah, I'm in the United States, and we're actually going to be switching out our air conditioner. We have an in-wall air conditioner, and we didn't have the money to get a full central air. I know, first world problems, right? So that's kind of what we're in the process of doing, and yeah, hopefully you've got air conditioning of some sort. Being an introvert is a great thing. Oh, okay. I'm an introvert too, so even with the pandemic, it's been okay for me. Although, you know, I'm married and I have a daughter. My daughter has been home as well during school, which has been kind of not that fun, unless it's for necessities. Yeah, me too. And the pandemic for me has been the same thing. I go out to the store maybe once a month, and that's pretty much it. It's just as long as, you know, just as long as you're able to keep cool. That's the most important thing as all hell breaks loose on this planet. And that eventually is going to be one of the major problems that we're going to face. I know there's been some articles talking about how air conditioning is, you know, killing the planet because of how intensive it is for energy to do so. And that's going to be huge. I mean, we honestly need to change our urban infrastructure so as to help to have much higher levels of passive cooling so that we can help prevent that problem. Where, man, how you doing? Welcome. Happy Saturday. Yeah, we're talking here, well, got some new people popping in, which is awesome. But I was reading an article here about communism versus resource-based economy, which is an interesting topic. Good to hear. I'm okay. My internet was giving me issues, specifically the adapter for my network card on my motherboard has been giving me issues. That's been my issue, at least, well, today and last week when I was having internet issues. So I have to figure that out, because it's dropping me from 100 megabits down to 20 megabits, and that's untenable if I'm going to be streaming and doing all sorts of stuff. So I was freaking out before we started, because I had to re-enable the adapter and restart my computer and then get everything started up again. So other than that, I'm okay. Yeah, but even with the pandemic and introversion, even I'm like, you know, I stay home. I don't do much. I'm in front of the computer all the time, but even I want to go out, you know, and my gaming group, we play Dungeons and Dragons every 2 weeks. You know, we've been doing it online for this whole time. It'd be nice to see them again. I'd like to go out to this sports bar, which is right next to me, like a block away, just over. And they have the most amazing Southwest chicken with a jalapeno bacon, and it is amazing. And I haven't gone there at all in over a year since the pandemic began. It's just, even for me, this introversion, the pandemic and my introversion, it's still a bit much. First, I don't like the pandemic due to the government forcing me to stay home. It's more of a rebel thing. Okay, well, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, and it's definitely, I get that. You're not the boss of me, bitch. But it definitely is safer, and being an introvert makes it easier for us to deal with that, even though we don't like it, right? Yeah, I stay home, I mask everywhere, I social distance as much as I can. Fortunately, our family we haven't been hit with anything yet, so I'm thankful. Although school is starting, and I don't think they're social distancing, but they are requiring masks, which is good, but that's not going to be enough, because the masks, you know, we got 600 kids and staff in there, and most of them aren't wearing N95 masks. It's gonna go to hell in a handbasket. Pretty much any school districts that's opened up without the social distancing and stuff like that has ended up closing fairly quickly because of the spread of Delta. My TV cable was screwed up today, so I said fuck that, and now I use what people call smart TV, something like Hulu. Yeah, we cut the cord 7 or 8 years ago, and we don't use cable anymore. We just use everything that's online. So yeah, I feel you. It's a bit of a transition, But once you get there, it's fine. Although the big benefit previously was that there weren't commercials, but now there's fucking commercials all over the place, which is making it just as bad as fucking cable. Opened my eyes to a lot of things. I wasn't very into politics, social issues. Now I'm addicted to... Oh, okay. Well, you're in a great place, because that's what we cover. I cover typically the 3 C's. Capitalism, coronavirus, and climate change. So I do a lot of that. And if you want... I don't know how much you've been here, but you seem a little familiar. I blog about politics. And I have my own policy site as well. So if you want some really light reading to put you to sleep, got a shitload of it right there for you. I haven't put out a major article in quite a while, like one that I've researched. I have one that it's been there for several years, one on daylight savings time. I have almost over half of it written. And at one point, it was going to be my largest post, but I still have to get through finishing the research on that and writing it. Light reading is definitely what I need for going to sleep. Okay, good. Well, there's a bunch there for you. If I don't like this one, I will change it. I think I prefer channels with numbers. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty. We've got Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and Netflix is what we use. The daughter and I use a lot of Netflix. There's a crap load there. The wife is more or less on Hulu for the most part. And then, of course, Disney Plus. Still smart TV, just numbers. Okay. That'd be cool if you can find that. That would be cool. And Stoic, if you really want some light reading, perhaps the most important book that is a required reading for my policies is this book here, The New Human Rights Movement by Peter Joseph. This is, if you're really getting into politics, you really want to understand what's going on, this for me is like, if I could buy this book for the whole world, this is the book that I would buy for everyone. This is such an amazing book. It explains it. This is kind of this book forms kind of the basis of my politics here. And as a matter of fact, I bought a few copies that I want to give to some of my relatives. Got a copy of the book right here. I originally read it on my phone through Amazon Kindle. There we go. So yeah, this is good. It's an amazing book. It's got 57 pages worth of sources, 52 pages, something like that. It's just mind-blowing. So there you go. Some more light reading. I like TLC since when did I turn from man into a housewife? Well, there's also the Learning Channel, TLC. That's another channel, right? Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, they have dramas, right? Is that right? The Learning Channel, TLC? Yeah. TLC? Doesn't say. I know. Well, whatever floats your boat, right? Especially in this pandemic, enjoy what you can to keep you entertained through the garbage that we're dealing with here with coronavirus and the fall of capitalism and the end of the world coming and climate change. You do you, boo. For me, I already have the basics and of what I want from my government to be, and I would say that I'm somewhat of a progressive and on a good amount of issues, but economically I'm way too lost. So where are you lost? It's difficult. There's a lot to the economics aspect. My policies go into a lot of it, minimum wage, maximum wage, and that sort of a thing. This book, if you read it, it goes into how the economic system in and of itself is the problem. And I've got very progressive policies in here when it comes to economics. High minimum wage, low maximum wage, wealth taxes, and all sorts of things in here. So if you want to look at something here, I have links in here too. Not as many as I probably should, but there's some links in there you can read as well to get you, to learn a little bit more. just to me interesting to watch American families, like something new to me. I know it's probably mostly fake, but yeah, oh yeah, it is. It's all fake. I mean, nothing, no families are like what these families are like. I mean, it's, you know, they don't really argue. It's, you know what real life is. It's not TV. My daughter and I are watching Riverdale, which my daughter wanted to watch it, I didn't, but we're watching that, and that's it's interesting because, you know, the family members they've got cults and serial killers and all sorts of stuff going on there, and it's just, you know, you watch these TV families and, you know, they're nothing like real life. It's just something I have to reiterate to my daughter. You know, this isn't real. There's nothing about the family interactions that are at all real. I mean, it's fiction. It's called fiction for a reason, right? So yeah, you just have to press your I believe button and then go from there. Oh, and economics also. If you're looking for another great book on economics, this book here, Donut Economics, this is also required reading. This blew my mind, this book. It really talks about economics the way I really think about it. It was really mind-blowing, and the visuals that she has for this is amazing. So if you want more of an understanding of kind of the economics angle, she does an amazing job of talking about economics and how we need to think about it. And this is a video where she talks about it. It's really good. It's really good. Again, my required reading here is really an amazing start. These two talk about inequality and the harms, talks about economics and sustainability and how our current system is messed up. And this goes into inequality as a public health crisis and what to do. And again, it's kind of like harms of monetary systems and what we need to do, you know, beyond politics, poverty, and war. I say beyond poverty, war, and politics. Yeah, lots of light reading here. My policies are 200 pages long, so there's a lot there to go through and lots of links, and then you got the books there too, so you're not gonna be bored for a while. Hopefully you can find it in what language do you speak from Kuwait? I don't even know. Arabic and English. Okay, all right. Groovy. You should be able to find it in Arabic, I guess. I mean, it's a major language. Yeah, you're being your second one. Okay, cool. You can definitely find it in English. Some of those, I'm sure you should be able to find in Arabic, possibly. Both my website, my blog, I do have the translator thing up here. So you could try and get it translated. Maybe it'll do a decent job as well. You want to go through it and try and see it butchered in Arabic. I wish I really had a second language. I wish the United States would really, that's part of my educational policy, pushing second languages for our children. I mean, it should be a core part of the educational experience from the very beginning, you know, from kindergarten, preschool, all the way up. That's okay, English is disappointing. Okay, is it? Oh, okay. All right then. They're all there available in English. Interesting. So why is English easier than Arabic? I'm assuming you're native Arabic, right? Is Arabic just that difficult? That's right to left, right? Correct? Yeah, I think it's right to left. That's got to be different. Reading left to right when Arabic is right to left. Private school, less time speaking in real life, and more Western side. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, more exposure to the English. I mean, oh yeah, that makes sense. My wife is from Belarus, and she kind of has that sort of an issue too. We've been married 17 years, and she thinks in English, and she sometimes finds it harder to find words in Russian when, you know, talking to her family and stuff like that. there's a huge community here of immigrants from all around Europe, and we know, of course, lots of people from there. Lots of mixed families, American and European, of course, and we have a party or so, and then we had a party this summer, an outdoor one, thankfully. That's exactly what they were talking about. Lithuanian woman was having the same issues finding words in her in her native tongue, and also her family was commenting how she's losing her native accent. She's speaking with an English accent now. It's pretty interesting. Linguistic, yeah. Speak Russian, Belarusian, English, and Polish and German. Oh wow. I came from the Mennonites and the Volga Germans who in the 40s found themselves in the USSR. Oh, okay. Interesting. That's lots of languages there. Good on you. It'd be nice if here in the United States, if they would be pushing 2 languages at the very least for everyone. I like in my, what do I do in my policies here? I say, oh, there we go, foreign languages. I think about learning Persian as well, but I'm going to stick to politics and economics. Okay, cool. Yeah, learning a language is difficult. It's so much work, especially as you get older. So what I say, intro to foreign language should be available, but it should also include intro to linguistics, and it should also use Esperanto as a base language to teach. And then the 4 languages that all schools should offer would be Esperanto as a first, then a local indigenous language, Cherokee, Lumbee, Blackfoot, or whatever is local to the area, American Sign Language, Spanish, and then there should be at least a 5th other choice. Chinese, Hindi, Japanese are great. Arabic would be another great one as well. Spanish should definitely be a second language in the U.S. Definitely. And when I was in high school, I took a little bit of Spanish and French. I enjoyed French more, but yeah, I only took just a little bit in high school. I was a shitty student then. I mean, really shitty. So I just didn't. It just wasn't my thing. But you're right. Spanish is definitely one of the top ones there. And of course, for the large emerging markets, Chinese and Hindi are amazing. Then, of course, Japanese is a huge powerhouse. 3 years in French, and I only know oui. Well, yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's what it boils down to. I remember a few words in Spanish and French, and Esperanto as well. Russian too, of course, because my wife is Russian. I've learned quite a bit there, but I haven't really spoken it in a long time because I haven't been back to Belarus because we haven't had the money. My wife and daughter have gone a few times. Like when we first got married, we went like 3 times. The wife and I did. Then we had our daughter, and then I haven't been back at all. My daughter's 12, and my wife and daughter have been back there 2 or 3 times, and I don't have any real requirements to speak Russian. God, I was born in the Slavic country due to the fact that I don't have difficulties with many things that can catch a conditional Americans and Brits at a loss. Okay, interesting. Yeah, English is such a bastardized language. I mean, it's amazing. I don't understand how anyone learns English as a second language if you haven't started from when you're really young, because it's such a bastardized language. It's just, I need to find, hold on. Talk about Esperanto. Why not English? There's a quote on here I need to put on here. So there's lots of, things here. Of course, colloquialisms, idioms, slang is always problematic. Homophones, homonyms, capitonyms. The inconsistent pluralization, bullshit. The inconsistent verb tensing, problem. Contronyms. And there's just so many reasons why English is such a difficult language to learn, because of its lack of regularity. Because my wife she's from Belarus, and I'm just amazed at how well she spells. She spells very, very well, even though English is so messed up. I mean, she gets some things wrong, definitely, but just by and large, it's just wow. That I want to revive. It's Roman, but then again, I'm just a Roman Republic fanboy. Ah, Latin. Yeah. Well, there's definitely advantages to Latin. That's what a lot of science is based off of. So, sure. I mean, if you're into ancient languages, especially European languages, Rome, and looking at historical pieces from that area, and then of course Christianity and Judaism and things of that nature, theology from that era, most definitely. English has changed many times, like history. Yep, Russian has become a language that likes to use foreign words, for example, English. Yeah, of course, and that's always going to be a thing. The smaller the world becomes, the more intermixed the languages are going to be. Like here in English, right? Like Middle English is what Shakespeare is what Shakespeare wrote in. And I can understand that. I like Middle English. It's beautiful. But if you go to Old English, one of my favorite quotes is "Make haste slowly." That's pretty neat. Make haste slowly. Cool. Like the language of Chaucer. Chaucer. Did we get original? Let's go Old English writings. Yeah, you can barely make out what they're reading here. But yeah, Old English is very different, the language of Chaucer, than it is from Middle English of Shakespeare than it is today. Changes. And then in some ways, that's something that we can use computers to help deal with. In 100 years, when we look at English, people aren't going to understand as much of what we're talking about. We can, use computers to tag things in the language so that, if the words aren't literal in their usage, or if they're homonym, a homophone, or whatever else, we can tag them and put in the descriptor of it so that when someone goes to read it, they can go, oh, okay, this is what it means. Or even, things that are very pop culture. Talking about a Kardashian, you just put that in, someone's reading something 100 years from now, what the fuck is a Kardashian? Then you can go to, Kardashian, click on it or highlight over it, and then it can explain the basics of what this is referring to and what its implications are for the text. And that's something that could be done for pretty much every single language. And honestly, we're going to have to do that at some point to make sure we, assuming humanity even survives, that I know Kardashians, right? Who the fuck cares? But to make sure that we can continue to understand what was written in the past by tagging it and explaining it so that we maintain that understanding. Just having that sociocultural understanding is a large part of understanding of what anyone has written in any given time. With older stuff, we lose that because you don't have enough writings, enough examples of what the culture is. But now we've got everything recorded, we've got computers, we should be able to do that. And that's something that can be done with older writings, as far as we understand the culture and what they're talking about in various things. We could, put the text on a computer, tag it so that when someone wants to read through it, that they can, get that glimpse into what the sociocultural meaning is of certain phrases. Kardashian, such a fucking waste. Such a waste. Yeah, there's the saying, right? You can tell how messed up our society is by the fact that the Kardashians has more episodes than Cosmos, right? You're alive, Luxie, welcome. Welcome. Are you just barely alive, or are you just really alive? Hope you're doing okay. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm live, I'm kicking. Got a nice group of people here today. How's your weekend going so far? School and stuff. Oh, isn't it? Oh, weren't you? I can't remember. Weren't you looking at going to medical school? Weren't you the one? I can't remember. No. I'm only playing the stuff from Stream Beats. That way I don't have to deal with copyright bullshit. Because that's a thing here on Twitch, unfortunately. Believe me, if we could play what I wanted to. Still ours? Oh, okay. Cool. I haven't played that in a while. I suck at the game. Because once that, yeah, exactly, Stoic. It's so annoying. Once that, that the hordes come out, I'm pretty much fucked. I suck at, I'm tactically impaired as a player, which is the way, so I lose a lot. Too anxious and shaky to be doctored that way. Okay, alright, so it wasn't you. Alright. Okay. Yeah, school starting. How's your start so far? I've been playing Warhammer 40k Battle Sector, and actually on my YouTube channel, I'm putting out a whole playlist of that recorded. I'll probably do Humankind just came out, so that's what I'm playing as well. I cheat for mostly roleplay and make stories in my head. I don't feel like it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, do what you do. Gotta enjoy it how you can. Allowance change based, though. For example, Russian was very close to Polish. Yep, and used the Latin letters. But during the Russian Empire, the USSR, everything changed a lot, and Belarusian became also a copy of Russian. Where to go? 80% similarity between. Oh, okay, interesting. You don't like your German teacher, but the rest is all right. Germans can be a bit abrupt and straightforward. We have a German friend here who's really cool. He's actually been to like France and India for learning how to be a baker. He's an amazing baker. He owned the German bakery in our town for many years until he retired. And he's super handy and stuff. Why was that kept away? What? Your turn? Oh. Apologies, sir. At least that's what I've heard. You can tell me otherwise. Yep, ABV. Yep, okay. Interesting. Yeah, imperialism forces lots of changes on languages in society at large. You're German, okay. Oh, okay. What degree are you going for? I don't remember. Okay, so why am I just getting pictures? There we go. Most effective attempts at replacing language would probably be the early caliphates and the Arab. Oh, really? What do they try to do? There we go. Here's Humankind. This is what I'm playing. I'm super excited about it. I won my first game, and I took second in my second game. Third in my third game. It's kind of a civilization contender, but I don't like their language and English accent because I think it sounds rude. Yeah. Oh, actually, I was in Germany for a week once. This was right after I graduated college, 2002, this summer. I was visiting a friend in Germany. She was going to Leipzig. She was in Leipzig and Weimar, and she was going to Bauhaus. It was interesting. Her parents are really nice. Her mother had a very dry sense of humor, which was interesting too. But she was great. Her friends were great. I didn't really notice anything beyond that. Just, you know, people are people. People are people globally. Typically, right? Unless they're aliens. North Africa and some of the Middle East got so Arabized that native languages kind of became rural in uncommon aspect. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Yep, kind of like when Christianity took over the Roman Empire, they shifted the indigenous religions to the outskirts and they became rural, and the word pagan in ancient Roman meant rural. Yep. Imperialism will do that. It'll take the indigenous stuff and it'll push it out to the sides and make it, quote, rural, which is, you know, away from the society center where that imperialism takes over. Has a strong and structured culture, so not a lot of things change there. Okay. Yeah, and it wasn't like in the 1500s. This is in Iraq. Baghdad was the center of culture in those days, before the rise of conservatism in Islam. A lot of festivals in Iran are still Zoroastrian in nature. Oh, despite being ruled by an Islamic. Really? That I do find surprising. Zoroastrianism was one of the large competitors for Christianity in the early Roman Empire. And there are even some, if I remember correctly, some of the cults, the officer cults in the Roman Empire were Zoroastrian. That's interesting. I would figure in Islamic, you know, most Islamic republics are fundamentalist and I didn't think they would allow that. That's pretty interesting. Estonian and Finnish languages, we can say that they are 100% the same. Also, they have the same music in the anthem, but lyrics are different, but it was written by the same dude though. Oh, that's interesting. Mithraist, yes. There you go. You're right. Mithraist, not Zoroastrian. Yeah. It's been over a decade since I've studied that. What's so Zoroastrian, so that's right, the cult of Mithras. Interesting. It's been a while. It's been too long. Thanks for the correction. Appreciate that. And I've heard that Finnish is also very difficult to learn. Well, actually, no, I've heard that it's not that difficult for English speakers to learn, right? But it's, oh God, I can't remember. So I've thought about, well, if I had the money and the resources to move, I'd definitely move to one of the Nordic countries. Like how Nestorianism had a major following in the Arab side of the Persian Gulf. I have not even heard of that, Nestorianism. Somehow Zoroastrianism wasn't that widespread there. What's that? Like one of the oldest religion? Yeah, I've not heard of Nestorianism at all. Oh, it's a Christian sect. Oh, I'm aware of quite a few, but Christian sect, mutually related, but doctrinally distinctive sets of teachings. Nestorius, of Christology, Mariology. Okay, so it's probably an Orthodox. Okay, what are their? Okay, what do they teach? Doctrine. Diophysitism. What is that? Differing from Orthodox Diophysitism. Oh my God. That he had but a single nature, his human nature being absorbed into his divinity. Jesus was not identical with the Son, but personally united with the Son who lives with him. Okay, okay. Here we're talking about the difference in Trinitarian philosophy. Nestorius's opponents found his teachings too close to the heresy of adoptionism, the idea that Christ had been born a man who had later been adopted by God's son. Okay, that's interesting. Nestorius was especially criticized by Cyril, Patriarch of Alexandria, who argued Nestorius' teachings undermined the unity of Christ's divine, human, and human natures at the incarnation. Okay, that's interesting. People here think baptism is a sect. Really? I mean, it's a rite. Jesus was baptized by John, right? Some of the minor Christian sects are very interesting to learn about. Looks like a metro line. Yeah. I've studied some of these, and not so much of the Orthodox sects, but like more along the Gnostic lines, the Marcionites, the Ebionites, something along there. Some of the older sects. Interesting. Interesting. I thought it was just like Catholics, Orthodox here, but in America. Yeah, Americans are just messed up. We've got obviously the Protestant and the more Orthodox. So when I was doing my research, there's basically for me two branches of Christianity. There's Eastern Orthodox and Western Orthodox, three branches, and then there's Protestantism. For me, Western Orthodox would be Catholicism. Eastern Orthodox would be the Russian Orthodox, the nationalistic Orthodox churches, which tend to be different than what the standard Catholic Church is, because once the Roman Empire started to fall apart, then that kind of started the schism in the Roman Orthodox Catholic Church. Then, of course, you got Protestantism, which is everything else. Individualized, one of the biggest forms of collective philosophy, that being Abrahamic religions. Well, Judaism and Christianity there's significant differences in them, and even Islam is very different. We do, and that's individualization is a large part of the problem with capitalism, because it requires exploitation and separation. Separation is a core trait of monetary systems and capitalism. So eventually I'll write an article just on that very thing. The harms of monetary systems, capitalisms, which creates hyper toxic individualism. Yep. Everything believes to everything, though aliens, hackers from Russia's Iran. Yeah. Well, it's, politically, it's the United States government always has to have an enemy. Otherwise, it cannot validate the reason why it has such a giant military budget, because, war is the most profitable industry, right? The U.S. military-industrial complex, imperialism, and that sort of a thing. And also, it's much easier to control the ignorant masses when they are afraid. So yeah, they always have to have someone to blame. Russia's, obviously the big one, or communism, right? We haven't had a generation that has been born in the last 100 years that has not been afflicted with the Red Scare. To be a bad thing, because people use it, for propaganda. Whatever form of media is available is always going to be used for propaganda. The writing, the oral methods, when that was the only thing. Communication of every form is always used as a form of propaganda to control the masses by those who are in power. Wait, it's always going to be. Pope Sylvester II? What did he do? I like the current Pope. He's not perfect by any means, but he's done some fairly progressive things. It is easier to resist propaganda on the internet. I don't know about that. Because you are exposed to so much more of it. And it can be much harder. There's think tanks that look good when they're not. Pope Sylvester II. Let's go for Britannica. Fuck off. Okay, 945 of the Common Era. French head of Roman Catholic Church. Scholarly achievements. Advances in education. Judgment. He was trained St. Gerald in grammar, arithmetic. He studied at the Quadrivium, a higher division of the liberal arts, which includes music, arithmetic, geometry, and astronomy under Bishop Atto Vic. Logic and dialect. He became famous for reorganizing logical and dialectical studies. Gradually, he eliminated simpler logical works and added monograms on logic by Boethius. Just getting to anything that you like. Became a teacher again and a musician in Otto's chapel. He also traveled with Otto to Magdeburg, where he displayed his inventiveness by constructing a timepiece. Like mostly his focus on education, philosophy, and academic subjects. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, definitely. That's a good thing. A very good thing. Education is much more broader than the brainwashing into belief. Yep, Pope Francis, he's a biologist. Okay, what is chemist? Pope Francis. What is he? He's chemistry. Yeah, chemistry. He's a master's degree in chemistry. Yeah, that's a good thing. Though he's even highly educated, he's still religious. So the brainwashing, yeah. Education can only go so far to alleviating religion. And actually, I write about that too. Over here. And you talk a world beyond religion on here. The only way to get to a world beyond religion is to end poverty, war, and suffering. Because one of the major drives for believers is dealing with suffering and despair. So basically, unless we get rid of capitalism and go to a resource-based economy, there's almost no way of getting rid of religion. Not that you can get rid of religion 100%. There will always be believers, people who believe in something, because you can't get rid of existential dread or fear or awe or curiosity. As long as those emotions exist, religion and belief, superstitions will always exist in some form. So fucked up now at least higher. A lot of useless theory for me. It's like a dog's dream with no practice. Yeah, I mean, education in today's world, it's difficult because of the corruptions of nationalism and capitalism. It's more that they need to train you to be a good cog in the wheel. I mean, theory is great because it activates your higher thinking, but taking that theory and putting it into practice is also very useful. And that's much of what I talk about in my post on resource-based economy, right? Why a highly educated populace is so important. The more people understand about the world, the more they'll see problems and the more they'll want to solve them. But also, like you're pointing out here, theory. All this theory is great, but we need to put it into practice. And when theory gets put into practice, that is where people start working and doing things of value for society. Yeah, agreed. And that's the whole problem. And I know you guys are fucking sick and tired of me sharing this post. For those of you who are like stoic, who hasn't been here quite as often. If you want to look at perhaps my most important post, it's here, Tension Within Methods of Exchange. It explains the very core problems of why monetary systems, trade itself, creates all the problems we see today. And the only way we can get beyond it is to evolve beyond monetary systems. It's just a 10-minute read. It's very high level. But I go ahead and explain the core of all of the problems humanity has in this post. There is a quote from St. Augustine, which I really love. It's so I listened to this a great course from thegreatcourses.com. It's like it's a 6-hour course just talking about St. Augustine. Yeah, there's a quote from there. I don't know if it was from that course or something else I read on him, but it said something like, if you should find yourself interpreting scripture, if your interpretation of scripture seems to conflict with what is written, and yet you end up with love and compassion, you have not found yourself deceived. And that is, for me, that's a very powerful, very important sort of quote. Now, obviously, anyone who gets into religion is going to have their own bias, and their religion is going to conform to their belief system, their individual belief system. But for me, that's kind of the core of it. Okay, man, Stoic, have a great night. Thanks for joining. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for gifting me with your time. Get some sleep and stay cool. Stay COVID free. Enjoy your introversion as much as you can, because I'm doing it too. Good night. Oh, thank you much for the follow, Stoic. I really appreciate that. Glad you found something of value here. Good night, good sir. And if we think about that quote from St. Augustine, if your interpretation of scripture ends up with love and compassion, you'll have not been deceived. And that really kind of goes down to my 8 philosophical pillars for peace, right? Justice and compassion, equity, the interdependence of humanity and the natural world. That really goes very much along with that. And if honestly most Christian sects went that way, where compassion and love and justice were the core part of their belief system, if that was the lens through which all things had to make sense, then essentially all religions would essentially be humanistic in nature. And that's ultimately where the problem is going to lie. If your religion is not humanistic or eco-humanistic, more specifically in nature, your religion is going to be harmful, period, because it will inherently create a separation between you and the rest of humanity, and you and the natural world. And that separation in and of itself is a violence. It is a rejection of our mutual interdependence. And the very harms that our world sees today is a direct result of capitalism requiring and even rewarding acting in such sociopathic ways that are an abject rejection of our mutual interdependence. And religions do that too. Religions reward and even require the rejection of our interdependence, because we have the right interpretation, they are heathens, they are non-believers, all that sort of a thing. Anything like that happens is wrong, and it is harmful because it separates us. Now, if only Christianity would listen to at least that line by St. Augustine, Christianity in and of itself would be a lot better. Whew. Lots of conversation today. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, let's continue on with this article talking about the differences between communism and a resource-based economy. We got through a bit of it here, but we will continue on. The main difference between a resource-based economy and communism is that the idea of communism itself is a theory of progress of a society, and many varying details have to do with exactly where a particular society is along that progression, and also how exactly it ends up at eventual complete communism, or what is known as a communist society. Right, there's lots of different interpretations of that, and that's a lot of the problem. In reality, when most people refer to communism, especially when they say it still uses money, government, or social class, they're actually referring to a communist state. And this is what China, Cuba, Vietnam are currently ruled under today. The problem with the communist state is it lends its opportunity for its leaders to take advantage of and abuse the system, and consequently the modern communist state is often characterized by massive corruption, poverty, and wealth inequality, with a few in charge reaping the most benefits. The commies. Right. Yeah, so this is... I talk about this as well in my post on socialism, because this is important. There have been no real communist states in existence. There have only been countries which have tried to go to communism, and by getting there, they first tried getting to socialism, because socialism is seen as some circles as the transitional state to get into communism. But basically every single time this has been tried, as they are pointing out here, as they're trying that shift from wherever they are now to socialism and to get to communism, it always gets mired down in corruption and poverty, as you see in China and Russia and all these other states, and authoritarianism, poverty, and corruption. That's what it always ends up being. And that's exactly right. And this is when I was doing my research on the post for socialism, the continuum, I was surprised to hear that. I wasn't aware of that. I mean, I'm an ignorant American, right? That's the way it is. But it was like, oh, okay. And that's important to understand, because there have been 0 actual communist countries in the world. They've all been failed attempts to get to socialism of sorts. And again, I talk about this, how all these have failed, how every single attempt to go to communism. Yep, Belarus, exactly. That is a prime example of it. Of how, where is it in here? It's not in here. It's in this other one. How and why all of these attempts to go to communism, socialism have failed. There we go. It's over here. So there's 4 reasons. 4 reasons. So the first is, of course, money. Now, communism itself is a stateless, moneyless society. So making that shift to socialism, as long as there's money involved, money will always end up corrupting things. And again, results in competition, exploitation, and authoritarianism. As long as money exists in that process, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that attempted shift is going to fail. Full stop. That's it. That's pretty much all you need to talk about. Now, if you're going to continue on, the second reason would be they don't have the correct societal values. I'm trying to make that shift to like socialism or communism from like feudalism or even capitalism, which are almost diametrically opposed. You don't have the existing eco-humanistic values to really implement like something like communism. So it makes it very difficult, because you've already have the brain damage from capitalism, from inequality, from authoritarianism, and all the other horrific harms inflicted by society. And dealing with those damages is very difficult. And it's difficult to try and create a better, happier world when you've spent decades, if not hundreds of years, under a value system which is diametrically opposed to it. The third would be they didn't have the technology. It's hard to do a planned economy if you don't have the technology, the manufacturing, the computers, the automation, the AI, and stuff like that, like we do today. Like today, if some country tried to actually do communism, they could actually do it. because we have the technology today to do that. I mean, Walmart here in the United States and its logistics is one of the largest, like the second largest in the world or something like that. Then of course, Amazon, the largest planned economy basically in the world. And it shows we can definitely do it. There was like Bolivia, I think it was, Project Cybersyn. They were trying it in the 70s, which resulted in the United States trying to coup it, or coupping it to get rid of their attempted shift to socialism and doing a planned economy. And of course, fourth problem why every single attempt to go to communism or socialism fails is because the United States destroys it, coup after coup, right? It's a what do we do? All right. In reality, this is simple, more of a government-run form of capitalism, right? So it's like China is referred to as state-run capitalism, right? Which is nothing like the actual communist society that the theory of communism and the communist state are supposedly aiming to achieve and still haven't and probably never will, simply because of the inherent flaws in the communist theories designed to begin with. Okay, this is interesting. I'm curious to see what they say are the inherent flaws with communism. However, the actual theoretical communist society is very close to a resource-based economy. And that's kind of how I think about it too. Although there are certain philosophical problems that communism has, and I talked about that earlier, that it tends to be nation-based, and also like the workers owning the means of production. That in and of itself is a separation. But that's my limited understanding. But let's see what they have to say. Oh, Arnold Bonnell, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome. Glad you found something of value here. All right. The actual theoretical communist society is very close to a resource-based economy, just with less actual planning, and the fact that the original idea was brought up 150 years ago, so there are some different emphasis. Right, and that's kind of what I'm referring to is, yeah, because communism and socialism are definitely byproducts of their era, and some of those contemporary, temporal, social anachronisms are part of the problems. The endpoint of the theory of communism, aka the communist society, a classless, stateless, moneyless society, is pretty close to what could be envisioned as the idea of a resource-based economy today. And yes, this is one of the generally accepted definitions of the communist society, while this definition is never stated verbatim by either Engels or Marx, as far as I've seen. Please correct me if you've seen it. It is generally outlined within their documents as described in this Reddit post. Oh, okay. I have read just a little bit of the Communist Manifesto, but it's so fucking dense. I love academic reading, but yikes, dude. Yikes. Okay, from Chapter 2 of the Communist Manifesto. When in the course of development, class distinctions have disappeared, and all production has been concentrated in the hands of a vast association of the whole nation. Okay, the public power will lose its political character. Political power, properly so called, is merely the organized power of one class for oppressing another. If the proletariat, during its contest with the bourgeoisie, is compelled by the force of circumstances to organize itself as a class, if by means of revolution it makes itself the ruling class and as such sweeps away by force the old conditions of production, then it will, along with these conditions, have swept away the conditions for the existence of class antagonisms and of classes generally, and will thereby have abolished its own supremacy as a class. I like long sentences. I mean, I do that. But fuck me. That is a lot to take in. A lot to take in. I pretty much would have to go through and read the Communist Manifesto and basically take notes and like rewrite what he's saying and reinterpret it so I can understand it. In place of the old bourgeois society with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. Engels writes on the stateless aspect in socialism, utopian, and scientific. As soon as there is no longer any social class to be held in subjection, as soon as class rule and the individual struggle for existence based upon our present anarchy in production, with the collisions and excesses arising from these are removed, nothing more remains to be repressed, and a special repressive force, a state, is no longer necessary. My brain on communism. Okay, I'm not even gonna try. The first act by virtue of which the state really constitutes itself the representative of the whole of society, the taking possession of the means of production in the name of society. Okay, so that's nationalizing things effectively. This is at the same time its last independent act as a state. Okay, state interference in social relations becomes in one domain after another superfluous and then dies out itself. The government of persons is replaced by the administration of things and by conduct of processes of production. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of similarities here into how I think about a resource-based economy. Something like that. Okay. In section 18 of Principles of Communism, Engels addresses the moneyless aspect. Finally, when all capital, all production, all exchange have been brought together in the hands of the nation, private property will disappear of its own accord, money will become superfluous, and production will so expand and man so change that society will be able to slough off whatever its old economic habits may remain. Okay, sure. So, and I say something similar to this within my post on tension within methods of exchange. Let me pull this up because it's important. Come about this slightly differently. How can we create a world based on cooperation and peace between humanity and the environment when the core driver of methods of exchange is based on competition, which powerfully rewards exploitation of humanity in the natural world? So how can we build a world based on peace when capitalism itself is based on competition and exploitation? And that's hard to do. So essentially, kind of what they're saying something similar here too. Once we have the socioeconomic system, the nation state owning everything, and everything is just about managing production, then everything will change based off that. And I use that logic in my writing a bit too. Like, how can we create the world of tomorrow using upon the technology of yesterday? Like, much of our problems with urban design are a byproduct of the urban design evolves organically, and it's based a lot of capitalism, everyone owning one of everything, everyone owning cars and stuff like that. And that creates the fundamental and the hyper individuality that it's a part of a capitalism. It's hard to create, the world of tomorrow when all of our cities are built upon that philosophy, about that conception of existence. We need, in a sense, to create a brand new urban design that reflects new values. Cooperation, communalism, mass transportation, all that sort of a thing. Okay, good. In Marxist thought, communist society or communist system is the type of society and economic system postulated to emerge from technological advances in the productive forces, representing the ultimate goal of the political ideology of communism. A communist society is characterized by common ownership of the means of production, with free access to the articles of consumption, and is classless and stateless, implying the end of the exploitation of labor. Okay, so this sounds, does sound like a resource-based economy. So for me, resource-based economy, again, the means of production are owned by no individuals, but it's owned by society at large, and everyone has free access to housing and all that sort of stuff, and classless and stateless. Okay, yep. And yes, the exploitation of labor is a large part of that benefit of automation and AI and that sort of a thing. Exploitation should not be a thing within a resource-based economy, because that is essentially what we are trying to end, much like communism. Communism is a specific stage of socioeconomic development predicated upon a superabundance of material wealth, which is postulated to arise from advances in production technology and corresponding changes in the social relations of production. This would allow for distribution based on need and social relations based on freely associated individuals. The term communist society should be distinguished from the Western concept of the communist state, true, the later referring to the state ruled by a party which professes a variation of Marxism, Leninism. Okay. Right, and kind of what I say on this part here is, because like, to each according to, okay, hold on. Right, to each according to their need, to each according to their contribution. And what I say is to each according to what we can equitably provide. Superabundance of material wealth, advances in production technology, corresponding changes in the social relations of production, free access to articles of consumption. Does this all sound familiar? Yep, much like I was talking about. Though there are a few differences. The differences may be viewed as trivial by some and huge by others. Some say that both social constructs are great and either one is fine, while others say the differences don't matter and either one of them will bring about untold suffering and misery. Others argue that some of the RBE ideas were intended, implied in communist society, but were simply not voiced, while others say that those differences are what make the two systems completely different. Either way, it's interesting and informative to look at a few of these ideas. The main and most indisputable difference between the two economic systems, for the most part, are how this futuristic post-scarcity society would be achieved. Many of the transitory systems that were implemented to try and reach the endpoint of communist society resulted in disaster. Corruption, greed, forceful execution, and the fact that society still had to interact with the capitalistic world at large, and a lack of solid vision or plan as to what a communist society end result would entail doomed the system before it even had a chance. Yeah, and again, when I talk about that earlier, in my other post there, why communism, attempts to go to communism, socialism had failed, that's pretty much exactly what we're talking about here. Yep. Eloquent as always, Peter Joseph sums up the flaws of the communist state and its workings quite nicely as in this short video. If you don't know who Peter Joseph is, by the gods, look him up and read his book. I talked about that earlier here. It is his book is one of the required readings, and it is perhaps the most important book here in the last 50 years. The New Human Rights Movement by Peter Joseph. Fucking read it now. In the earlier stages of the progression towards communism, many things are advocated to be literally implemented by force. An all-out class warfare is said to be utilized to literally exterminate, even by armed violence if necessary, the status of the elite, the bourgeois, and achieve the endpoint of the eventual communist society. Obviously, this would be completely against the principles of a resource-based economy. Right, so, and I was talking about this earlier, right? When it comes to at least communism, my limited understanding that it's thought that to get to communism, it has to be done, it can only be done through violence, and that is fundamentally against the very tenets of a resource-based economy. So yes, there is that difference. And actually, once you start murdering people, like they're doing here, like they have done in the past, you are violating one of the 8 philosophical pillars for peace: interdependence of humanity with itself in the natural world, and that's highly problematic. Straight from the Communist Manifesto, here are some of the possible steps towards achieving a communist society. Okay, I have not seen this. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. Heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Abolition of rights of inheritance, confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. Okay, that's problematic here. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with a state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Okay, so my policies actually do these right here. I use a very progressive tax income structure, and I don't necessarily abolish inheritance, but it's greatly reduced. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state, not so much. For me, it's like the resource-based economy. It's not. I refer to it as centralized decentralization. Like there will be one overarching, the Venus Project talks about cybernation, right? Everything will be interconnected through one system so that everyone can have access to everything. But also we're trying to hyper-localize production and make each community as self-reliant as possible. Now that's not going to be possible completely, right? Because you're not going to be able to build all the clothes, all the food, especially when it comes to rare earth minerals, right? That's not going to happen. So there's definitely going to be places that will specialize in this and that and the other thing, and shipping things as needed is going to be a thing. So yeah, there will be a centralization, but it will also be decentralized as well. Microgrids, if you will. Think about that as an analogy. Oh, a metaphor. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state. They're bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of soil, generally in accordance with common plan. Okay, this is just talking about shifting to more sustainability, I suppose. So that's good. Yeah, with a common plan. Again, a large-scale global plan, and resource-based economy does kind of get into that, specifically with one of the primary things that enable a resource-based economy is claiming all resources on the planet as a natural heritage to all of humanity, not just a country, not just a person or business or family, but to all of humanity. Equal liability of all to work, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Yeah, again, this stuff here, this is all very period specific. It's very anachronistic. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by more equitable distribution of populace over the country. Okay, so this is interesting. So a combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries. Of course, this is very anachronistic, of course, but you know, in this day and age, we can pretty much fully automate agriculture if we got to it. So, okay, sure. So gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of population across country. Okay, so this is something I have thought about. Because if you look in like the United States, there's the difference between how urban areas vote and how rural areas vote. And that's, I mean, I've thought about how do we deal with that? And I've thought about something similar here. Well, how do we reduce the quote ruralness of rural areas and keep them from being conservative? Because conservatism is the core problem we fight against, and which causes so many problems, like we see in Texas. So, yeah, I've kind of considered, I haven't quite put it like this, more equitable distribution of population. If we could build our cities first, again, like the Venus Project talks about, for specific populations, and have these areas where, well, actually, because we're trying to make every single city, town self-sufficient, they make their own food. Well, yeah, that's kind of at least how I envision a resource-based economy would kind of do this as well. Free education for all children in public schools, abolition of children's factory labor in its present form, combination of education with industrial production. Okay, so multidisciplinary education, sure. I kind of talk about this a little bit, but not. I expect this is going to be anachronistic as well. Very specific to the time, 100 years ago. But having education, which is in, we have college, and we also have our union sort of, plumbers and stuff like that. Yeah, they have education that way as well. Okay, confiscation of property, heavy income tax, abolition of inheritance, industrial armories. Are you kidding me? No wonder this was a complete catastrophe. Did they think people would simply willingly hand over all they own and tell the government to put them into work in the fields until that mythical day when a communist society magically comes to life? Yeah, and this is what I'm talking about. They did not have the technology to be able to make this to happen like we do today. Another principle of communism that seems a little different than a resource-based economy is from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs. Right, and I talked about that earlier, and I would say that a resource-based economy is from each, or to each according to what we can equitably provide. Equitably and sustainably provide is probably, I may need to adjust that. Equitably and sustainably provide. According to this rule, if taken literally, if society deems your utmost contribution to be sitting behind a desk programming computer algorithms for resource distribution, you could be very well forced to work at this position, hypothetically speaking. And this technically could be an aspect of one of the stages that theory of communism would use to reach the hypothetical communist society. To each according to their needs probably wouldn't include 24/7 access to jet skis or unlimited round trips to Tokyo, but in a resource-based economy at its pinnacle, not only is this possible, but it is expected to be a general principle. In a resource-based economy, this phrase would probably resemble something more like from each a contribution of their desire to each according to their needs and desires within reasonable capabilities of our resources and production methods. Okay, it's similar to what I've said. This is acceptable. A bit longer, but yes. Yep. However, for clarification, in a fully developed communist society, you are free to pursue your passions and realize self-actualization, or in other words, you are free to pursue your own ambitions and desires, as described in Marx's theory of alienation. Another minor difference between communist society and a resource-based economy is that some have said exists, although this one may be debatable, is that in a resource-based economy, there seems to be more of an emphasis on utilizing the planet's resources in the wisest possible way to create access to all goods and services, not just based on needs, but on individual desires as well. It's noteworthy that in Marx's time, resource scarcity was not anywhere near a pressing issue as it is today, and this is truly one of the hallmarks of a resource-based economy, especially given our current dual plights with peak oil and global warming. Yeah, and so yeah, not looking at sustainability within communism most likely is an anachronistic thing too, because they didn't have to worry about it, whereas we do. And for a resource-based economy, sustainability or even regenerativeness is a core tenet of it, using our resources well. And that's, if you look at, like, when I envision a resource-based economy, this is kind of the philosophical pillars that I think that they would be embracing. The interdependence of humanity with the natural world, how do we accomplish it? Sustainability, education, equity, justice, and compassion, and through the use of science and technology. A couple other things to consider when comparing the two are the facts that technology wasn't yet available for much of the automation that Marx and Engels had envisioned in the communist society. Exactly, and that's why I was saying why attempts to go to communism has always failed is they didn't have the technology. Computers that could control and distribute resources via algorithms were science fiction. Electricity was in its infancy, communication was slow and laborious, and cars hadn't even been invented yet. So there was no real plan as to how the society would actually operate or even be designed. In contrast, today we have all this technology and more, giving us the capability to draft out and even implement such a society, designing in advance everything we could possibly think of, down to the types of materials that the walls of our 3D printed homes will be made of. We are much more capable these days, to say the least. Yeah, exactly, and that's what I talk about over here, right? So I'm not totally off my wall when I said that, even with my limited understanding. Right. Okay, not cooperating. Okay, so, and also what I'll point out here, in this post here, I'll throw this in here, how might a resource-based economy play out if it ever did? I do talk about how long it might take. Now how long it might take, this is given sort of from the point where humanity as a globalized civilization decides, hey, we want to do this, right? So how we get there, I have a section on that too, but that is a whole different thing. That's a whole different question. How we get to the point where humanity's like, yeah, fuck money, let's set ourselves free. Don't know. But ultimately, I say that from the point that when we make that decision collectively en masse, that it will take approximately 80 years to get most of the way there. We're talking establishing the education, setting in the values, having the values change, teaching this stuff, and then setting up the infrastructure and building the cities that reflect the values that we want to do, right? Interdependence, humanity with the natural world, sustainability, and that sort of a thing, right? Again, like I was talking about earlier, our infrastructure reflects our broken values of capitalism. So it's hard to build the society, the world of tomorrow on cities who reflects different values. Another aspect of the mindset that came with the communist platform to thoughtfully consider is the fact that it was written before the occurrence of 2 world wars and before millions of people died under the rule of communist leaders. Well, not actually communist leaders, but. So there was far less concern with forcefully pushing communism on the world and what effects it could possibly have. Back then, people were used to forcing their will upon others, especially in a societal sense, which is quite different from today, and the goal was viewed as more important than the means by which it was achieved, right? So, ends justifies the means, right? And that's always problematic. Now, the complete opposite is true. Due to the neglectful actions of past leaders, many individuals are terrified of communism and see its only possible outcome as a completely totalitarian state that emerges after the unnecessary deaths of millions more. And with its history, they have every right to think that. Exactly. And I had a conversation with someone who was from that, Soviet era, and that's the mindset that they had. It was so. I don't want to say irrational because they kind of lived through it, but it was so strongly entrenched in their brains that they couldn't actually consider that, like they're saying, anything even similar to this could ever turn out as anything other than a bloodbath. So the resource-based economy and communist Marxists may have roughly the same end goal in mind, but given the negative history associated with communism now and how much fear and hatred exists surrounding the subject, we need a vastly different approach of how to actually get there and a complete overhaul of the theory of what will actually work as a transition period. Yeah, so the transition period, and I talk about that here. Again, it'll take about 80 years, right? When do I talk about this? Getting to the transition point. Let's go over here. 80. Generation. Oh, actually, I think it's under the section called Magic. It'll take roughly 80 years from the point that we decide to do it. That's pretty. And the transition point is the transitional period is, once the decision is made to do this, that everyone is still going to live in the same life that they have today. Although, okay, let me actually go through this, how I envision this. So there's a lot of math involved in this. Let me actually go by. Hold on. Get back here. Harm mitigation. I'll just kind of go over this part fairly quickly. So, like when they're talking about the transition periods here, one of the first parts of that transition period is basically easing the harm mitigation. We've got the harms of capitalism, right? So we need to try and ease this globally, right? So there are people who are homeless. They'll be given empty homes, apartments, hotel rooms. Those without food will be given food. Those without clothes will be given clothes. We've got plenty of clothes and food and housing globally to give everyone what they need. Those who are in lower quality living arrangements will be moved to higher quality housing if available. and those who are living in exorbitant and gluttonous extravagance shall be moved to more efficient and equitable accommodations. Buildings which are exorbitant and gluttonous shall be used as efficiently as possible, and where these sorts of steps don't solve the problem for housing and food and clothing, then we'll do what we can to build out the basics to make sure that they have what they need, while the larger technological and social innovations are taking place. And I talk about the rest of that sort of stuff here. I'll throw that in here. Here's the harm mitigation. It has a direct link to the harm mitigation part here, if you want to go through that. How will a resource-based economy make the transition? Okay, for the most part, the main proponents of a resource-based economy advocate a top-down approach. They say world leaders come together someday in the future and agree, possibly if the general public is well informed enough and demands it. That's effectively what my post over here talks about. This one here. I give 4 different methods of how that might happen. And this is the best way for humanity to live and begin to implement a system such as this for all individuals to follow. Unfortunately, it has also been said that this will most likely only come after a total economic collapse, after which the transition to a resource-based economy isn't guaranteed or even likely, and could instead be supplanted by one world government or a new world order. Doesn't that sound nice? Right, and exactly. And that's much the way I see it as well. The likelihood of this to actually happen, where we get to the point where people understand what a resource-based economy is and want to shift to it, is very unlikely, especially with as much rage as there is against communism and anything that is people working together, that brain damage from capitalism. And again, one world government, new world order, we're talking, authoritarianism as usual, corruption, and all that other sort of stuff because of money. Aside from not getting much done, the problem with this sort of implementation is that when you have leaders dictating what sort of economic system the world is to follow, not only will you have many people who will fight tooth and nail against it and do everything in their power to fight the system, especially those against communism, most likely resorting to violence and even possibly war. But you also have world leadership telling the general population what to do, which is by its very nature completely contradictory to the general idea of a resource-based economy. Therefore, the only way to transition to an actual resource-based economy is completely and utterly voluntarily from the ground up, and nothing else will work. I don't necessarily agree with this. I see what they're saying. This method up here could work. Like those who want to fight against it, well, they don't have to. They can just do their own thing until they finally realize what's going on. But it's hard to do it from the ground up because you would, much like Jacques Fresco talks about this, right? Unless you do it basically globally, it's almost impossible to do because you need the resources to make this work. I know there's many people in the resource-based economy community who think this way, and I understand that, but I unless you can do this mass scale like what ends up being up here, it's almost impossible to have this to be done small scale. Otherwise, it wouldn't be truly be a resource-based economy to begin with, and there'd be so much backlash during the actual transition period that it would be doomed from the start, just like communism. Leaders may come together and suggest it, but they cannot force it. To do so would violate one of the main principles of a resource-based economy. To begin with, voluntary participation. Okay, so the problem with this is, no matter what, there's always going to be backlash, people who are going to say no. You're not going to get 100% consensus, just by virtue of the brain damage that we have from capitalism and from attempted implementations of communism. It's impossible unless you've had so many decades, if not almost a century, of global world peace, where capitalism no longer exists, where communism is just the horrors of attempted implementations of communism are so far in the past that it doesn't, it's not in people's contemporary minds. And this is kind of wishful thinking here. Furthermore, our leaders probably wouldn't even suggest it until they see that society is capable of working together and cooperating in much more harmoniously than present, which is why we must do everything we can to build and implement as many aspects of resource-based economy into our lives as we can to demonstrate that it is possible. to show there's a better way of life, to wake people up, and to help them realize that they do have other options, that they have the power and wherewithal to turn them into reality instead of the mindless zombie ritual of our 9-to-5 existence that is simply called life for so many of us. Okay, so this I can't agree with. My policies do kind of approach it that way. If you look at my economic policies, I do talk about sharing centers and things of that nature. Let's see. Open and free research, open source everything, get rid of IP laws, right? Digital government infrastructure, collaborative works, nationalize things, right? Public good patent buyout. Where do I have? Maybe it's over here. Not economic. Environment. No, environment. Yeah, my policies do kind of do approach it that way, that we try and add the portions of a resource-based economy that we can. Where is it? Okay, adding sharing centers, something like that. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Definitely. While I know this post will anger some individuals, I also hope that it can help bridge the two communities with a call for us to work together. Ultimately, even though there may be some minor differences in the end goal of the two, I believe that many true communists and Marxists have the same vision for a future society as the resource-based economy movement. And I also hope that this article can provide a forum for people to discuss and engage in ways to build this bold new world. In reality, it's only by understanding each other's point of view, overcoming our differences, building on our strengths and similarities, compromising where we must, cultivating and practicing these principles through living and working together, and building something greater than ourselves, that we will eventually be able to build a society that resembles an actual resource-based economy. This is why we are being called to build sustainable communities powered with their own green technology that produce their own food and water with technologies like FarmBot, aquaponics and permaculture, We must go local in production with many things, utilize 3D printing, contour crafting. What's contour crafting? I've not heard this one before. Don't know. Waste recycling and further developing open source designs such as the Global Village construction set. Examples of its places like Regan Villages and Tamara can be used as a blueprint, and their success is built upon. It's time to share ideas and openly work together to achieve the highest good of all, practicing principles such as those that One Community Global has laid out. Much progress will be made when we start collaborating more via platforms like the transition.org and supporting each other in our business endeavors to develop new technologies and work together in cooperatives like Mondragon and Evergreen. Mondragon is the largest cooperative in the world out of Bastille, Spain or something like that. The information and technology we need to do it is there. It's combining it into solid ideas and living it in our own lives on a daily basis that will make the difference. There's no more time like the present to do this. The tools and resources we have been given in our present world are unprecedented in the history of our planet, and we no longer have any excuses to not create the world we desire. As an end note, if there's anything you find to be incorrect about this article, please let me know by commenting below or sending an email to contact@moneylesssociety.com. Please provide references to investigate, and I'll do my best to revise it as necessary. However, I won't change it just because somebody simply disagrees with me. Okay, good. And it says I'm wrong without any documentation to back it up. Okay, fair. It is my goal and intention for this document to be as accurate, honest, and up-to-date as possible, and it's definitely not here to simply please everyone. So let us heed the warnings of our fathers and learn from their mistakes, but also let us not discount our true potential and stay stuck in the past, especially at the cost of our own peril, when we need to work together now more than ever. Okay. All right, it's a good article. I really like the way they cover it, and they kind of talk about things kind of in the way that I do. Obviously, they have a hell of a lot more knowledge than I do. But it's also good to see that my conception of at least basic conception of communism and socialism and why they failed are very similar. So I'm on the right path here. And again, you'll see here when we talk about a resource-based economy how we do have differences in thinking. And if you get into the resource-based economy community, you'll see that people have a lot of different ideas about how and why to do things. So that's the thing. All right. Questions, comments, suggestions on this topic. I know we got through just one article today, but that's okay because we had a lot of great conversation in the middle talking about various things, which is very cool. Anybody? And we've also reached our 2-hour mark, so I'll have to be calling this a day here in just a moment. So I'll leave the end here for the last minute for comments, anything at all, random or not, before we call this a day. And again, in my Twitch, in my About area, you've got my blog, my Patreon, donations, my policy site, Discord, all that stuff is in there too. Oops. So if you want to support me, you got the Patreon donations below. You can do that as well. I would very much appreciate that. No, it's cool too. Pandemic and all that other garbage going on. So anything. And Sunday we might be playing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not sure if we will or not. My DM has had some a medical issue recently, so hopefully he's doing okay. If we don't, that's cool because he's gonna need the rest. So yeah, there we go. Anybody, last call. 1, 2. All right, everyone, have a great weekend. Stay safe, and thank you for what time you've gifted to me. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys next week.
Just me and you, let's make up all the rules. Count to 10 and watch the stars turn blue. Watch the stars.